The single dad's everyday struggle, raising his daughter, juggling odd jobs, and fighting to stay afloat. He meets the struggling farmer when her tractor breaks down. Despite his own hardships, he fixes the tractor for her without expecting payment. The first light of dawn crept through the thin curtains of the small apartment, touching the worn-out furniture and the silent hope that lingered in the air. Michael Thompson stirred from his restless sleep, his back aching from another night on the thin mattress that sagged in the middle. The clock on the wall flickered 4:52 a.m., its steady ticking a reminder that another day of struggle had already begun. He turned his head toward the couch where his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, slept soundly, clutching a stuffed bunny with one ear missing. Her chest rose and fell in the slow rhythm of dreams, her face peaceful, untouched by the worries that plagued her father's mind. For a moment, he simply watched her, his heart swelling with both love and guilt. Love because she was his world, guilt because that world was built on so little. The heater rattled again, fighting the cold of early spring, and Michael exhaled a tired sigh. There was no time to waste. He swung his legs off the bed, his feet meeting the cold linoleum floor, and moved quietly through the cramped room so as not to wake Lily. In the tiny bathroom, the mirror reflected the story of his life via dark circles under weary eyes, stubble shadowing a face that looked older than its 35 years, the subtle stoop of a man who carried too many burdens for too long. He splashed cold water on his face and whispered his morning mantra under his breath. Just one more day, Lord, give me strength for one more day. It was a promise and a plea, both to himself and to the heavens. By the time the alarm buzzed again, he had already packed Lily's lunch: a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a small note that read, "You can do anything, my sunshine." He woke her gently, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Morning, bug," he whispered. She blinked up at him, smiling sleepily. "Morning, Daddy." "Is it time already?" "Afraid so," he said, lifting her small frame and setting her on her feet. She stretched, rubbing her eyes, and looked around their modest home. The peeling wallpaper, the mismatched dishes, the soft hum of a fridge that worked only half the time, none of it seemed to bother her. To Lily, home was wherever her father was. Over a breakfast of toast and instant coffee, she asked softly, "Daddy, will you be home early today?" He hesitated. The truth was always hard when it came to her questions. "I'll try, sweetheart," he said, offering a smile he didn't quite feel. "Maybe we can watch that cartoon you like." She nodded, satisfied with hope, and he tucked that small joy away as something worth working for. They left just before sunrise, walking hand in hand through the chilly streets toward the bus stop. The air smelled faintly of rain and distant diesel. Lily chattered about her school project on butterflies while Michael nodded, half listening, his mind already running through the day ahead: his shift at the hardware store, the evening hours at the mechanic's garage, the bills waiting on the kitchen counter, the overdue rent notice taped to the fridge. Yet even amid those thoughts, he found comfort in the warmth of her small hand in his. When the school bus arrived, he lifted her up the steps, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Be brave, okay?" She grinned, waving as the doors closed. He stood there long after the bus disappeared from sight, drawing strength from the echo of her smile before turning toward another long day. The walk to the hardware store was quiet, the streets just beginning to stir. The town was small, the kind of place where people nodded hello out of habit but kept their problems to themselves. Michael liked it that way. The less people knew about him, the less pity they felt. The hours at the store passed slowly. He stacked shelves, hauled heavy boxes, and helped customers who often forgot to say thank you. Sweat soaked through his shirt, his back ached, but he kept going, because stopping wasn't an option. At noon, he ate his sandwich outside on a wooden crate, staring at the distant hills that framed the horizon. Somewhere out there, he imagined, life was easier. People didn't have to choose between paying rent and buying their kids new shoes. But that wasn't his world. His world was here, with its cracked pavement and honest labor. By the time his second shift at the mechanic's garage started, his muscles felt like they were carved from stone. Still, he found a strange peace among the tools, the hiss of air compressors, and the smell of oil. Machines made sense to him. They broke down, sure, but they could always be fixed with patience, with the right touch. People weren't always like that. Around 6:30 p.m., He wiped the grease from his hands and headed out. The sky above already streaked with gold and violet. The bus fare home would cost him $2, money he couldn't spare, so he took the long road that cut through the farmlands. The breeze carried the earthy scent of freshly tilled soil, and for the first time all day, he felt the tension ease from his shoulders. That's when he heard the uneven sputter of an engine gasping its last breath. Up ahead, just off the road, a tractor sat motionless in a field, its front wheels sunk in mud. A woman stood beside it, frustration etched into her every movement. She kicked at the tire, muttered something under her breath, then pulled her hat lower to shield her eyes from the setting sun. Michael slowed his steps, debating whether to keep walking. He was tired, hungry, and still had another mile to go before home. But as he looked at her struggling alone in the field, something stirred in him, a quiet voice that refused to let him pass by. He adjusted his worn jacket and stepped closer. "Evening," he called out, his voice carrying over the wind. "Looks like she's giving you some trouble." The woman turned, startled, her eyes narrowing slightly before softening. She was in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, her face sun-kissed and lined from years of working under open skies. "That's putting it lightly," she said with a half-smile. "She just up and died on me. I was hoping to finish before the rain comes. But looks like that's not happening." Michael nodded toward the tractor. "Mind if I take a look? I work on engines for a living. Might be able to help." She hesitated, studying him. His clothes were plain, his boots covered in dust, his posture weary but kind. Something about his eyes steady, honest, made her trust him. "Sure," she said finally. "Can't make it worse than it already is." He smiled faintly and climbed onto the tractor, turning the ignition and listening to the uneven sputter. Within seconds, he knew the problem. "Sounds like a clogged fuel line," he murmured, mostly to himself. He rolled up his sleeves and went to work, moving with the easy precision of a man who'd spent half his life fixing what others had given up on. The woman watched in silence, arms crossed, curiosity replacing her frustration. "You always stop to help strangers?" she asked after a few minutes. "Only when they look like they could use it," he replied without looking up. "Besides, these old machines remind me of my dad. He used to say a good engine just needs a little patience." "Sounds like a smart man." "He was," Michael said quietly. "Wish he'd stuck around longer." She caught the hint of sadness in his tone but didn't pry. Instead, she watched the way he worked, methodical, calm, unhurried, as if every bolt and wire deserved respect. After about 20 minutes, he straightened up, wiped his hands on the rag, and said, "Try it now." She climbed into the seat, turned the key, and the tractor roared to life, the engine humming smoothly. A laugh of pure relief escaped her lips. "You did it." "I can't believe it." Michael shrugged modestly. "Wasn't much. Just needed a clean line." "You'll want to replace the filter soon, though." "You just saved me hours of work," she said, climbing down and extending her hand. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need," he said, shaking her hand. "Just glad I could help." "At least let me pay you something," she insisted, reaching into her pocket. He shook his head. "Keep it." "I didn't do it for that." She blinked, surprised. Most people wouldn't turn down money so easily, especially someone who looked like he could use it. "You sure?" "Positive," he said, smiling faintly. "I've got a daughter waiting for me." "That's payment enough." Something softened in her expression. "You're a good man, Mr. Thompson." "Michael Thompson." "Well, Mr. Thompson, I'm Claire," she said, offering a smile that reached her eyes. "And if you ever need help around here, don't hesitate to ask." He nodded politely, stepping back toward the road. "Take care, Claire. Hope you beat the rain." She watched him go, the fading sunlight outlining his silhouette against the open field. There was something about him, something rare, a quiet dignity that came not from wealth or status, but from heart. As his figure grew smaller in the distance, she found herself still thinking about the man who fixed her tractor and walked away without asking for a thing. Michael, meanwhile, made his way home under the deepening sky. The stars began to peek through the violet haze as he reached the outskirts of town. His body ached, his stomach grumbled, but his spirit felt lighter somehow. He thought of Lily, probably finishing her homework by the flickering light of their old lamp, and smiled. That smile stayed with him all the way home. He didn't know it then, But his simple act of kindness had set in motion something far greater than he could ever imagine. For Claire wasn't just another struggling farmer trying to save a few acres from the rain. She was the owner of vast stretches of farmland across the heartland of America, fields that fed thousands, maybe millions. Her tractors and crops were part of a network that reached far beyond the horizon. Yet in that moment, as she watched the man who expected nothing walk away, she felt humbled. Kindness, she realized, was worth more than gold. That night, as Michael tucked Lily into bed, she whispered sleepily, "Daddy, did you have a good day?" He paused, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said softly. "I think I did." Outside, rain began to fall gently against the windowpane, washing the dust from the streets, soaking into the earth, preparing it for something new to grow. Somewhere miles away, a woman named Claire stood on her porch, listening to that same rain, thinking of the man who had fixed her tractor and wondering how she might repay the kindness of a stranger who had unknowingly changed the course of both their lives.